Hey everybody, and welcome to another APA style video. We are working with LibreOffice and Open Office in this series. I am doing what I've done with Excel, numbers, Google Sheets, and explaining how to make APA style figures and graphs for your research projects. Of course, this is geared toward students, but if you are a researcher needing some tutorial advice on how to do these in different programs, then this is why you're watching the video. LibreOffice and Open Office have a small market share when it comes to productivity. You don't hear about LibreOffice Calc or OpenOffice Calc very much, but that's what we're in here. And, there is a market, so I thought I'd jump in and show you how to do it. And the one thing that sets me apart from other individuals giving tutorials on these apps is this is geared specifically towards making APA style and readable per their conventions and rules. Rules is kind of harsh, but their requests on how to make graphs and figures readable to everyone in all formats. If you go to a journal website, they'll say that your graphs need to be at least 300 DPI, dots per inch. So, or PPI, pixels per inch. So, making these graphs in these files rather than the graphs that are made in your statistic programs like SPSS, JASP, Jamovi, Stata, etc., it gives you a little bit more control. And these apps allow you to get a ton of basic, that's important here, basic figures and graphs for your statistical visualization purposes. Now, of course, you're going to need programs like R or Jamovi and JASP based on R to get really fancy looking graphs that you see all over the place. But these are for basics. This is why I gear my tutorials toward students, whether they be undergraduate or graduate students or even high school students, right? Making graphs and having all of the information be readable and useful, not only from, just a reading standpoint, but also a data visualization standpoint. So in this video, we are going to be making a 2x2 Factorial ANOVA column chart. Sometimes referred to as a bar chart, but in these spreadsheet programs, columns are vertical and bars are horizontal. So we are going to do a column graph, a 2x2 Factorial. So we've got a 2x2 setup here with our means. We've got one IV represented by what group participants were in, whether they got math skills prior to doing a math test, or they were given confidence building prior to a math test or a statistics test, out of 100. And as you can see, mean scores weren't that great. This data was from a stereotype threat paper. Not my paper. It's just random data that exists out in the internet. These numbers are, I can't remember exactly where I got them from. I think maybe a data file that you can get in JASP or Jamovi, which are my two main data processing suites that I use based in R. The statistical programming language. So these are the two groups. Stereotype threat, right? Are you, what is your gender basically, right? And so we've got men and women as our other variable. So this is technically a P by E factorial, right? We've got our experimental variable here, randomly assigned men and women to these two groups. And then we've got a sample of men and a sample of women. And these were their scores in each group. And what are you doing to activate the stereotype threat of the stereotype that women are not good at math, right? That's the stereotype that's here. We also have down here in the appropriate positions, the standard errors. I have set them up to be in the same locations for each of these. As you can see, the men have the same standard error, and so do the women, and they are slightly different per experimental group. So let's make a 2x2 column graph, and then in the next video, we'll have the same exact data, but we'll make a line graph, okay? So let's get it started here. We're gonna go up to Insert Chart. We're gonna click on that and it's going to bring up the chart wizard. And of course it puts the chart in the way of everything, but that's okay. So in my previous video where we just did a bar chart, I went through each of these 4 steps. I recommend doing this. I gotta say, I forgot, cancel that. So let's make our column chart, shall we? Let's select our data so it knows what we're going to use. And let's go up to this icon that doesn't really have a label. It's called Insert Chart. And we're going to click on it. It says Insert Chart there on the tooltip, right? So there we go. It brings it up. And we've got blue and yellow bars for everything all ready to go. Now, in my previous video where I just showed the bar graph for a single variable with 2 levels, I went through each of these steps. I'm not going to go through each of these steps in this video, but I do recommend hitting next. So I will go and hit next, and you can see how the default changes for each of these, okay? And don't forget, we have 2 data series. We have math skills and we have confidence building. The last one that I'm going to stop off on is our titles and legend and grid settings. This allows us to finish what our chart looks like almost immediately. We only have a few other things to change once we're done with this wizard and we click finish. So let's go ahead and do that. First things first, we don't need titles. No titles in APA. No titles, no subtitles. Figure captions handle what it is you want to say about the graph in APA style. But we do need axis titles. So as you can see, we are doing men and women down at the bottom. Now you can switch this if you want to. That's where you'd go back to data range and change that. If you wanted confidence building and math skills down here at the bottom and men and women over here, that's totally fine. You can do that. There's no And that is an aesthetic and presentation choice. No prescriptions on how to do that. I generally like having gender down here at the bottom because we know that it's going to be this, at least in this data set, a binary choice for people, right? Men and women. Maybe there were non-binary or trans people. Maybe they were grouped into men or women. At least the trans people were non-binary. Maybe there was one or two, and they're not included in this data set. That could be it. Or it was essentially men, women, prefer not to say, etc. And so the prefer not to say people were excluded from this analysis. So we're going to put gender here because that is what this is. And it's going to add gender down here. Perfect. Y-axis is going to be their score, their statistics test score. Statistics test score. Oops. And we want to specify that it is out of 100 in parentheses here. Perfect. Statistical test score. Statistics test score is what I meant to say. Now, we have that in. Next two options are the legend and the display grids. Well, we don't want grids. Some people like them. I tend to think that they muddy a graph, especially when you do a scatter plot. So not necessarily want these in there. The only ones that were on by default were the y-axis. We uncheck those and gone they are. Okay. The other thing is this graph and its legend make it needlessly wide. So what I want to do, because there is no title on this graph, I actually tend to prefer it on the top. Again, this is a aesthetic choice, but it's a choice that makes a lot of sense to me because of how this graph is set up. We got to move everything around. It maximizes and makes our space a little bit more efficient. So we're going to do that and we're going to hit finish. We're almost done, guys. We're almost done. What we need to do now is change the appearance of each of these axes, get rid of this border around the axis, and then add our error bars, and it'll be done. It'll be wonderfully done. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and change these particular elements. Let's start with the x-axis, right? So we're going to go up to this chart area dropdown. It has all of the things that we can modify regarding this chart. Actually, before I do that, let's go ahead and make this chart a tiny bit smaller. Ooh, no, a little bit smaller. There we go. Oop, too far. Scroll too far. Sorry, everyone. There we go. And then I want to just grab this and move it slightly over there. There we go. Look at that. So you have all of the information here and you can see all the information here. That's pretty much all I wanted to do. And I can make it a little bit taller for our y-axis purposes in a minute. Okay, so let's go ahead and change the x-axis. So we click on that and we click on this format. We can also double click and it'll bring up the dialog box. We can also right click and format axis. So there are three ways that you can go ahead and format the axis. We go ahead and just click this button, then it'll bring up this dialog box. I'm going to use the x-axis to go through all of these. It'll be the same for the y-axis, and it'll be slightly the same for the tiles themselves. So scale, we don't want to mess with. Positioning, we don't really need to mess with. The one thing that I might change is get rid of this tick mark right here. We don't necessarily need that. We know these two things are separate, so we can uncheck that. No changes made in this dialog box will show up. So the wizard makes changes immediately. These change dialog boxes, you have to click OK to activate the changes. So you can do each of them piecemeal. You can mess around with stuff here, hit OK, see what it looks like, and then go back to it. Or you can make all of your changes at once, hit OK, and see how that works, right? So positioning has to do with like where this information is. Is it men and women, the words themselves, this side of the axis and close, or on the other side of the axis and close, right? So you can change that or change that, all of them. Line, we want this line to be solid black. So that's what I'm going to do. It's continuous line by default, but for some reason, gray is that default. I don't want it. I want that to be black. Label is the words themselves. Where's their position? How do they look? Font effects. Well, what does it look? What does the font look like? You can add special stuff. You can add overlining, strike throughs, that kind of thing. I'm not going to do that. Font, however, I do want to change. Arial tends to be a good font for distance reading, for dyslexia, and for kerning, the space between the characters, especially for distance reading. I also like to make my font size 14. So depending wherever this graph ends up, in a document, in a manuscript, a printed manuscript where they change the size of the graph to fit it in 2 or 3 columns, a poster presentation and somebody's reading from a distance, or even like a PowerPoint or LibreOffice presentation slide deck. Arial works the best everywhere. Numbers, we don't need to change anything about numbers because we actually want it to be just words. We don't need to change any of that. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. Men and women increase in size. We also have to do that with gender. So I'm going to go up to x-axis and hit title. Click on the format selection button. Only thing we really need to do in this case is go to font, go to Arial, and you can see it was even smaller than 10 point, those axis labels. And we're going to go to 14, and we're going to hit that there. Wonderful. Smushes everything to fit within the chart area, which is amazing. Let's do the same thing with the y-axis title. Okay, hit the format button. Let's go up to Arial, okay, and change it to 14, statistics test score out of 100. And we're going to click OK. Okay, wonderful. Oh, I just realized that it does this subtle flashing. That's cool. Okay, as you can see, it's pretty big. It's pretty big. And even at 100% zoom on this sheet, Arial 14-point font looks pretty big when you compare it to Excel. So yeah. All right, next thing we're going to do is y-axis. We're going to click on this and we're going to click on format. By default, LibreOffice will go to the last tab that you were in on whatever you were formatting. So we're at font already. So that's great. We can just highlight all of this, click on Arial and go to 14. Boom, done. Look at that. And it will make them all big. I didn't mean to hit OK. Let's go back to that. We forgot to change the line, which needs to be black. That's the x-axis here. The positioning has to do with the where the numbers themselves are, but also these tick marks. So by default, outer is selected by default. If you wanted to do cross, then you would also check inner here, makes inner and outer, or you can just have inner, which I don't think looks that good at all, but that's just me. And so yeah, outer, and then you can do minor axes, minor numbers as well. And then finally, we've got scale. So you can see here that I have out of 100. LibreOffice has decided automatically that 90 is the highest number. So we got to change that. And it's important that we change that because it's important to show the full scale of a y or dependent variable. So the visualization is accurate, right? So we're going to uncheck automatic, and we are going to increase this by to 100. We can change the interval scale if we want to. We don't really need to. We can, and then hit OK, and it'll do all the changes that we need to. Because 100 is slightly wider than these 2-digit numbers, it made the area of the y-axis a little bit bigger, so it's smushed over to the side. That's all right. Alrighty. One more thing to do before we add error bars, and let's get rid of this like border here, right? So we're going to go up to chart wall. That's what it's called, the chart wall, and we're going to click on it, and it's going to bring up our formatting options. We're going to go up to continuous and change it to none. We're going to click OK. There it disappears. We don't need it, okay? Everything's looking good about this 100%. Now we need to add the error bars. So adding the error bars, as I've mentioned in the previous video, only seems to be available if you right-click on one of your series. Okay, right-click or control-click. And here you have your error bars and a few other options that you can add to these particular bars themselves. I'm not entirely sure why there isn't a button up here. That would be amazing. Or if you go to your series and you click on that and you click format, that there isn't an option for error bars in here. Okay, only an option for the bars themselves. This is where you change spacing and things like that. But there's, and color, of course. But there's nothing else regarding error bars here. I wish there was an option off here. Cancel. So maybe LibreOffice, if you are watching, maybe you can make that happen. So we right click and we have insert Y error bars, not X error bars. Those would be horizontal and not useful for a column graph. But we're going to insert Y error bars. Okay. And here it comes up with the Y error bars themselves. Two options, the line itself and the error bars themselves, like the values associated with them. So we actually don't need to make any changes to line on the line tab because it's a continuous line. That's what we want. And it's black. That's also what we want. So let's go to Y error bars. We get two options. We get the error bar values on this left side, and we get the error indicator on the right side. Positive, negative is on by default, or you can just do positive, you can just do negative. As you can see, they always have the end caps. The end caps are always there. There's no option like in Word to remove the end caps. This is an aesthetic preferable choice for me, so I'm fine with it. The next thing we want to do is change the value, right? So if we had a constant value, we could choose that. Percentage, we could choose that. We have a drop down of different calculated variables, standard error, standard deviation, variance, or error margin. These assume that you are working from raw data, not aggregate data, which is what I have here, right? This is aggregate data. So we don't want any of these. So what we got to do is we have to specify the cell range. The cell range is going to be for math skills. So I'm only going to be looking at these two numbers. And of course, they're the same exact for confidence building. So it's not like we're going to run into any issues if we make a mistake here. The one mistake you can make in this situation is to go across rows when choosing the values rather than down the column, right? We don't want the two blue bars to have 3.43. We want the men to have 3.43 and the women blue bar to have 3.67, okay? The best option to save a few clicks is right here. Same value for both positive and negative. We click on that, it gets rid of the negative selection tool. We don't need it because it's automatically going to enter whatever we put in for this positive value. Now you can type in here if you want to, or you can click on this select data range, and we're going to go down the column to get math skills for men and for women. That's how that works. And as you can see, it put in the sheet. So the difference that you might notice here is if you've used Excel before is that we don't actually need an equal sign. We just put in the sheet number and the cell range. Dollar signs mean this information remains static. So there we go. We hit OK to finish that out. And here we go. We have this Y error bar and this Y error bar. They're not going to look that different because 3.43 and 3.67 are 0.24, a quarter of a value on this graph different. So they look relatively the same. The orange error bars are going to look the same too. So that's blue done. That's math skills. Let's do confidence building. Let's do a little bit more quickly on this one. It's going to bring up what tab I was in last. That's okay. We don't need to go to line. We need to go to cell range. Same value for both. Let's move this down just a little bit. And we are going to click on this to choose 3.43 and 3.67, these two cells down the column, not across the rows. And it'll put it in for negative. We hit OK, and there they are. And that, my friends, is how you do a 2x2 column/bar graph in APA style in LibreOffice. Now, I did mention that in these videos, I would also explain the Open Office process, which is the other open source, free access. So we've got our stuff set up the same way. I'm just going to quickly go through this here. We choose our data. We go up to chart. This one's not insert chart, it's just a chart. It brings up the chart wizard. Chart wizard is exactly the same as before, right? You can see that these are the same. We've got math skills and confidence building because it grabbed my labels for my series. And then chart elements, we've got just grids, legend, and our titles. So here we're going to put in gender, and here we're going to put in statistics, test score out of 100, close parentheses. Boom. Top for our legend. No y-axis display grids, and we are going to finish. Okay, so here we go. There we have it. Let's get rid of this format wall. As you can see, it's continuous in gray. Let's get rid of that and hit none. We hit OK. Wall is gone. Excellent. Let's go up to, let's do the titles first and format selection. We are going to change this. Oh, it is a Arial by default in Open Office, which is great. We're going to choose 14 and make that so. Let's do that to the y-axis title. And it does flash here too. Interesting. Based on the same stuff. Okay. We're going to choose 14 because it's already Arial. Now let's go to x-axis. It's going to bring up the same options as, oh, I got to hit format selection. It's bring the same options up as before. We were last in font, so let's go ahead and change that to 14. Before we go, I think we are good. Oh, no, we need to change the line. Different color selection here. You got to scroll up to get to the black. And that's what we're going to do here. Oh, I left the tick mark. That's fine, whatever. Let's go to y-axis and format selection. Let's change the line to black. There we go. Scale, again, we are going to have to change this to 100. They don't have any of these up and down arrows, so you have to actually type it in. Let's go to font. Arial is already selected. Oops, too far. 14. There we go. Hit that in there. Now you can see that because with the way that this is sized, it automatically changed that to every 20. Not a big deal. You can change that to every 10 if you really, really wanted to. Okay, we just have to change the size of this graph and have to make it longer this way and longer this way. And as you can see, it changes the nature of the graph. It's all kind of smooshed in there, but that's all right. So that's all set up. As far as appearance-wise, we just need our error bars. So again, right-click because OpenOffice, just like LibreOffice, does not have an option for error bars. So we're going to hit insert Y error bars here. Again, same options. Line we don't have to deal with because it's continuous black. Okay, positive and negative caps, end-to-end caps are there. We just need to specify a cell range. Same value for both. Choose where on the graph. We're going to go down this column here because it is math skills. Blue is math skills, so we go down and we hit OK. Boom, there they are. Let me move this over slightly. Put you over here. Nope. There we go. Let's bring the graph back over so we can all see it. We can make it look nice and pretty. Okay, we right-click on the orange bars to get the confidence building error bars. We click on that. Everything else is the same. We just need to specify the range. It's the same for both positive and negative. We're going to go down column E. Oh, I got to click that button. Specify down this column. Here we go. And we hit OK. And boom, done. That's how you do the same exact process from LibreOffice in Open Office. Wonderful. You can make changes on where these things are in the graph itself. If you were to export this as an image file, it will save it exactly as you have it here. And so that is how you do LibreOffice and Open Office 2x2 APA style column chart, bar graph, column figure, bar figure, whatever you want to call it. If you have any comments, suggestions, questions, or other feedback, please leave that down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.